There we go. All right. Well, hi, everybody, and welcome to the AI Council meeting for June of 2026. It is the 12th rather than our usual meeting date of the 5th, and that's because we just had a lot of folks traveling, so we decided to move the monthly meeting this month, and looks like lots of people are here, so it looks like you were all successfully got that notice, so thank you. Miles, do you want to put the agenda on screen?
And just a heads up to everybody, I was not able to attach the updated draft guidelines document to the chat, but I just sent it to all of the attendees via email. So you should have received that in your inbox if you haven't already.
Okay, great. Thank you, Miles. All right. So agenda for today, the plan is to look at our minutes from last month and get those approved, talk about the updated employee guidelines on the use of AI, and we would like to bring that to a vote today and get the updated guidelines approved. So we'll do a walkthrough of the changes, and we can make edits in real time here if we want to. But the goal is to get that approved. And then I'll talk a little bit about the AI Economic Task Force, which is a new 2-year task force the governor established by executive order a couple weeks ago. So with that, I will hand it over to Miles to facilitate us through the first part of the agenda. Oh, we will have time for public comment at the end. As you can tell, I am not the usual host of this meeting. Susanna normally does a great job driving this meeting, and I am but a poor substitute. So appreciate your patience, and feel free to holler if I miss anything. All right, Miles, over to you.
Great. So I know the first agenda item is the approval of the May 1st minutes, and I can pull those up on screen for reference as well.
That'd be great. Thank you. Right, and for those who can't see the screen, we're just scrolling through the minutes to confirm that they are all looking good. And I think we're just about to the bottom of them. Great, thank you. So the minutes are also posted on the AI Council website. And so hopefully you're able to see them there. If folks are ready, I would accept a motion for a vote to approve the minutes.
I move.
Thanks, John. Can I get a second?
Second, this is Susanna.
Thanks, Susanna. All right, so it has duly been moved and seconded. So if I can get all the council members to vote on this, you can. The motion is to approve the minutes from the May 1st meeting, and all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Or raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
All right, that was unanimous from all the council members. So thank you very much. The minutes are approved. Back to you, Miles.
All right. Thank you, Josiah, and to all of our council members. So the primary thing that I wanted to discuss today, again, is just a refresher on the current updates that we've implemented for our employee guidelines on the use of artificial intelligence. So my hope is that we'll be voting on this update shortly, but in the interim, I also just wanted to give a quick refresher on what we updated and why. So again, for context, the existing document that we currently have in place was last updated in November of 2023. In the time since, we've seen seen obviously some pretty significant increases in the capability of artificial intelligence systems, as well as increased modalities by which artificial intelligence is available to employees, both through additional embedded systems in existing enterprise software, as well as new modalities like AI note-taking and meeting transcription assistance. So really, our updates here had three primary goals in mind. The first is to broaden the scope of the guidance to include these additional AI modalities that have arisen since November of 2023. The second is to differentiate between public and internal systems, taking ChatGPT versus ChatVT, for example, since those two buckets of artificial intelligence systems, broadly speaking, have significantly divergent data usage and data security requirements. And then lastly, we wanted to expand the allowable use cases in the AI citation matrix, just under the recognition that AI capabilities for things like document generation have improved considerably over the past couple of years. And then additionally, we made some structural changes to the matrix just to make it ideally a little bit more transparent and easier for employees to navigate. So again, just a quick refresher on the AI modalities side. For artificial intelligence meeting assistance and transcription tools, the general concern here is that depending on what type of tool this is and who the third-party vendor is that's providing it, these tools can provide significant privacy and security considerations, particularly for meetings where external participants are present and maybe bringing in their own third-party meeting assistants that our state employees may not be familiar with. For AI features that are embedded in third-party applications, we're increasingly seeing that just about any type of productivity or business app now has some level of embedded AI features like AI-assisted drafting, automated classification, and so on. And really, for both of these buckets, we want to make sure that employees are clear that they're responsible for ensuring any AI feature they enable or use is processing the underlying data appropriately and isn't being exposed to any data that is inappropriately confidential or sensitive for the data usage of the application that they're using. So for the next update here, again, just to differentiate between public and internal artificial intelligence systems, the updated guidance makes this differentiation to make it clear to employees that the same existing data usage restrictions in our present version of the guidance apply to public AI tools specifically, which limits the use of non-public information for those kinds of public tools like ChatGPT and Gemini and so on. So that those underlying data usage requirements are not changing. We're just differentiating that separate bucket of public AI tools because our internal AI tooling like ChatGPT, those tools are pre-approved for employee use and can be used with most types of sensitive or confidential state data, in exception to the public tools. So we just wanted to make it clear to employees that these two discrete buckets of AI tooling do indeed have separate data usage requirements. And then just a quick refresher on the AI citation matrix. This is the previous draft that we went over at last month's meeting. We had a lot of really interesting and helpful discussion on this, namely centered around just ease of use for employees. One of the things that we settled on is that these percentages don't really make sense to a layperson just because the specific percentage of a given document that was generated by artificial intelligence is really challenging for people to assess. And then we additionally had some discussions about whether there are additional distribution channels or modalities like generating documents from transcripts that aren't covered in the guidance as it sits now. That specific use case, that's something that I'm hoping we'll address in the future with a specific policy governing best practices for AI-generated documentation review. But for the purpose of getting this sort of minimally viable class of updates implemented into the guidance, per our last discussion, we settled on making the necessary changes to the citation matrix and then approving those hopefully, and then we'll move forward to address some of the more nuanced questions in future guidance. But to improve the readability and clarity of this citation matrix, we made two primary changes. So the first is adding this additional column to the guidance, or this additional table that clarifies what each of these categories actually is, just in human readable language, since I think that this is inherently going to be a lot easier for people to parse than trying to estimate the percentages. Additionally, I really appreciated one of the council members brought up this question at our last call that they use as a heuristic. You know, if I were drafting this product with a human, at what point would I need to give them credit? I feel like that's a really helpful example for how employees should be thinking about incorporating artificial intelligence into their work and citing it appropriately. So that's the first change, just adding additional clarity as to what these column headers actually mean. Before I jump to the next slide, since this is new information for you folks, do we have any questions on this point? Cool. So then the next change is just to simplify the structure of the columns on the matrix. So we're getting rid of the percentage estimates and just going with the breadth of, or just the AI involvement category titles, again, which correspond to those definitions, which are just directly above this in the actual document. And then additionally, we added this note on AI generated images. Per our discussion last month and a number of similar discussions that I've had with folks in communications and marketing, for example, a lot of folks have concerns about AI generated images, and particularly for public facing documents and websites and, you know, press releases and that kind of thing. This guidance is indicating that using artificial intelligence generated images for those use cases should really be avoided unless there's no viable alternative. So as one example, I saw a communication around 6 months ago that one of our partner agencies put out that had an AI generated image of a truck on the cover. I saw this on Reddit with a lot of negative commentary surrounding the use of an AI generated image. So in those kinds of use cases where a stock image or, you know, some other form of real image would be a viable alternative, I think that limiting the use of AI generated images in that context is just generally advisable, you know, per constituent perception of AI generated images, as well as some of the broader concerns that we have as a state regarding the use of artificial intelligence, like making sure that we're conscious of using it efficiently and minimizing our environmental impact. So those are the changes to the structure of the matrix. Again, the actual categories within the matrix remain unchanged. So really, we just simplified that header, added the additional table summarizing what each of these categories means, and then added this note on AI generated images. So any questions based on this slide?
Quick thought from me. It might be nice to have the 100% AI instead say human reviewing or human reviewed, to point out that like human review is still necessary. We actually don't have a category that's purely AI. Something along those lines. John, you have a hand up?
Yeah, there's a, I think we might have talked about this once, but you know, like if you ever go in and you read medical notes, like you go to a doctor, it'll say DNBR, dictated but not read, or DB, you know, DBNR. Maybe we come up with a simple acronym to say, you know, generated but reviewed, or you know, something. So there's a thing in medicine already that says, you know, we're going to let technology transcribe this, but I'm not really going to check it. So don't rely on it too much. There was you know, do we want to put something like, hey, I kind of use some AI on this, so, you know, caveat emptor, you know, I didn't review it really carefully. Or do we never? I mean, the point is that's going to happen for stuff that isn't high impact. Do we want people to at least fess up? Maybe not. Maybe it's too much of it. It's too easy to say. But next time you go for a physical or something, look at the notes, and at the bottom it'll say, yeah, DBNR.
That's a great call out. I don't know. I'm open to definitely more discussion on that. Josh, I see you have a hand up. Josh is not a council member, but if council has no objections, I'll recognize him to participate in this discussion.
So just
Hearing
to
no
say,
objections. Go ahead, Josh.
okay, sorry about that. So just to say, as a state employee, like a common use case is Copilot generates the transcriptions of a meeting, and then you cut and paste those transcriptions into ChatVT, and then we create a Word document with a little disclaimer up top saying this was done by ChatVT based on the transcription, but it sure makes it handy, and honestly, those notes probably don't get much review.
Yep, that's a
Yeah.
fair
That's a
call out.
perfect example. That's a perfect example. It's like not somebody being careless, but this is something you would never have had access to. We're making it available, but we're not going to spend a lot of effort cleaning it up. That's a perfect example. The way I said it made it sound like you're being lazy, but this is like there's no way that you would sit down and read the entire thing and correct it for grammar.
And
That's a
I
great
guess
example.
I just to sort of clarify my thoughts on this, we use artificial intelligence to generate documentation from transcripts and other source materials very frequently, and we found that current AI systems, obviously it requires human review to check for hallucinations or confabulation and other common errors, but artificial intelligence is very reliable at these kinds of use cases, and we definitely want to make sure that employees have the opportunity to use artificial intelligence for this, considering the efficiency gains that can be generated from that kind of use case. Josiah, to your comment on potentially changing the 100% AI category to human reviewed, I guess my thinking here is that the way it's currently written, the 100% AI category indicates content that was generated entirely by AI with no substantive human drafting contribution. And I think for the categories that we have disallowed, to me that feels appropriate, since my hope is that we'll have additional guidance, which we're currently working on, that's specifically focused on best practices for reviewing AI generated content. And my assumption is that anything that gets generated by artificial intelligence, obviously that does need to be reviewed, and we need to make that guidance clear to employees. But really, my interpretation of the citation matrix and the point that I'm trying to make to employees here is that if you do generate something entirely with artificial intelligence, we want to be clear that anything that's 100% AI is not allowed for press releases, prepared remarks, and the other categories here. And I think that, for public facing materials, for example, generating documents with AI, either from transcripts or by synthesizing other information to create a document, even though that is a 100% AI generation process, for press releases and so on, I would expect that would require a level of human review and editing that would probably shift it over, to one of the further left-hand categories here. So I guess my question is, for the primary purpose of this matrix, which is to make it clear to employees, what they can and cannot use artificial intelligence generated content for, in these different types of AI generation. As it stands now, do you feel that the matrix is sufficiently articulating that, regardless of this outstanding question on where AI generated documentation falls into this, or do you think that would explicitly need to be referenced in the matrix in some capacity as well?
I guess my thought was that in our citation, the pro forma declaration is that it has been reviewed and represents the intent of. So I guess it's okay as it is, in my view, because we have that, and what reviewed means could be, yeah, it could vary depending on the context, and that's probably sufficient. Okay. Yeah, okay, I withdraw my suggestion. Thank you. It's good discussion.
Any other questions or comments on this change?
I think the other thing that stood out to me on this slide was AI generated images. It might be worth putting in addition to that note that is that the prompt is often embedded in the image. And I think that's come up a couple of times as a surprise to people, that people are able to see the prompt that they use to create the image. And if that, like, that can reveal a meaningful amount.
What?
So often the prompt is embedded in the image metadata.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I never knew that. I'm
It,
gonna go
it
look.
can be stripped out of it, but just like that
Mhm.
should be in people's heads, right? Because if you're, yeah, you would prompt differently if you knew that the prompt itself was potentially becoming a public piece of content.
That's a really good point. Thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely add that to that note as well, just for employees' awareness, because I think that that's something that very few people are aware of. Any other thoughts or questions here? Right. So then my next slide is the placeholder for our approval vote. So I'll turn it back over to you, Josiah, for this portion.
Any further discussion on any topic? I know we lingered on that one slide, but there were a few other changes going on. Go ahead, Amanda.
I think the changes are good because I get these questions like 3 times a week. But I think my only question would be, what's the plan for rolling this out and managing potential confusion and communication?
Miles, you want to
That's a good,
address that?
yeah. So I'm planning to coordinate with our ADS communications team to send out a statewide email update summarizing the contents of the updated guidelines and what specifically changed from the last version. And that will be concurrent with updating the actual guidelines that we make available on our AI website, the ADS AI site. Do you think, Amanda, that just that combination of an email communication concurrent with updating the guidelines would be sufficient, or would it be advisable to undertake additional communications beyond that?
Option B.
Cool.
Just
what? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
the guidelines are very technical, and I understand why they're very technical, but it doesn't often translate to people that are often newer. So there often is people translating like in between. So like I've played that role, and I know other people have played that role. Maybe if they work in operations or like they work a lot with Microsoft tools. So if there's like a FAQ or one pager that's a little bit more plain language, that might be helpful.
That's a great idea. Thank you. Yeah, I'll definitely put that type of document together as well.
Okay. Any other discussion? I will open it up for public comment at this time as well. If any one who is not a member of the council would like to say anything about this before we vote to approve these guidelines. You can raise your hand and put things in chat. Okay. Well, I don't see anything, so I will entertain a motion to approve the updated guidance. Okay, I see that motion from John Cohn. Can I get a second? All right, I see a second from Amanda Jones. So, all right then. The motion is to approve the updated guidelines as just presented. All those in favor of approving the employee use guidelines, say aye or raise your hand. Okay, I hear one aye. I'm not seeing anything from others. Okay. And an aye from Amanda. All right. Any opposed? Okay. And any abstentions?
Yeah, this is Chris Curtis at the AGO. I think on any matters of policy or law, I'm in a position of having to abstain, just because if there's ever a challenge, we don't want to necessarily be on record one way or the other. So, and we may be in a position to have to defend the state based on any. And so I see the comment. It's guidance, not policy, but I'm going to exercise my discretion and abstain.
Okay, thanks, Chris. So we have one abstention, three in favor, and at least one abstention. John, I didn't see how you voted, but I'll say that that passed. So thank you. Thank you for approving the updated guidelines, Council. Okay, great. I see John saying yes. All right, great. Okay, so 4 ayes and an abstention. Thank you. All right. So what's our next agenda item, Miles?
The next item is the AI Economic Task Force.
Great. Yeah. So I will take that one. So yeah, in back in May, so a couple weeks ago, I don't remember the exact date off the top of my head. The governor put out an executive order establishing an AI economic task force. And this is intended to fit adjacent to the work that this council is doing. But as it says on the slide, really focus on how AI is reshaping Vermont's economy and be more outside focused. This is not a the structure of this council is that it's not an open meeting type of council. It's an internal advisory council to the governor. It may provide information to the legislature, but that's not the main point. So this is more of like an internal working group, this upcoming task force. I'll drop the link in the chat to the executive order and then to the press release that the governor's office put out on the topic in case you haven't seen it. So I'll go in a little bit of detail about how the task force is intended to work and what the working groups are, and then entertain questions. I will say task force is still in planning mode. We have been the chair of the task force, and then those of us who are supporting from inside state government have been meeting to do some of the planning work up front before membership gets announced and all that sort of thing. So there's a lot of paint that isn't dry yet in this, but we do have the charge from the governor, and that's what we focused on today. So so the task force creates 3 working groups. The first one is an economic acceleration working group, which is focused on Vermont's AI readiness in general and focused on the workforce development work that needs to happen. Also, it will be looking at AI opportunities and what investments are required to make those become real. So that's the economic acceleration work group. Second work group is small business competitiveness, which is I think a little bit more clear based on what it says on the label. It's about helping small businesses to adopt AI. I believe the intended outcome is like a toolkit for smaller businesses to use to accelerate their own AI adoption. And then the third work group is about community resilience, which is again a toolkit focused on Vermont's communities and helping them to think about what workforce changes mean to their communities, what all these AI related topics, in addition to how they can adopt and use AI tools. The task force itself. So the overall structure is that there's a task force which is composed of a handful of members. I think it's up to, trying to remember the number. I think it's like up to 15 or 18, somewhere in there, which includes the leads of the work groups themselves. And then the work groups can be composed of a variety of people. They can bring in additional people as needed, kind of whatever they need to do to accomplish their goal. Um, and so the task force itself is also responsible for making some recommendations about AI. Like I think they're looking for a handful of specific AI actions, AI places where within government processes they can focus AI tools. I think we've talked about a lot of those here, and they're just going to be adopted by the task force. But that's I think the closest point of overlap between this AI council and the task force. The task force chair is very aware of the work that's been going on here, and both Denise and I are engaged, so we're making sure that things stay well aligned. John, you have a hand up.
Well, you just answered one question. I was like, so there is some cross representation. So you and Denise. Okay, great. In the economic acceleration, do you know if there's any conversation about compute resources, infrastructure, credits, things like that, sort of the technical aspects of giving
There is.
small businesses?
So there's a few things converging that I'm really excited about. So one of the things the task force called out was the Rural AI Collaboration Hub, which was a pitch that we had developed after conversations here. And ADS had pitched to the governor's office earlier this year. That became like a part of the task force's mandate. And that's exactly part of what that's supposed to be doing, is helping businesses and just other communities be able to access AI talent and tech, and kind of guide them through that process. In parallel with all of this is the National Science Foundation grant to establish AI hubs. So we are talking with several of the entities who are applying for that. And again, like just there's again cross representation, right? Trying to steer all these things together to drive the best outcomes we can. And I can talk a little bit more about that tech grant process if you're interested, but it is very similar to the structure that we had laid out for the Rural AI Collaboration Hub, but the NSF is funding one in each state. So they've invited entities to apply. The expectation is that whatever entity is awarded in a state will work with that state's government on steering and on ensuring that they're supporting the community and state government operations as well. So that's another work stream we're engaged in. And then the third, I think I counted to three, an additional piece that's happening. We are continuing to talk to philanthropy about engaging and getting some just additional funding for the Rural AI Collaboration Hub in order to accelerate the work, kind of to get funds to implement the work that the AI task force is going to be framing. So that's a lot of material. Questions on any of that?
Thank you.
Cool. So the chair is of the task force is Neil Lunderville. I believe that's been publicly announced. He's been speaking on a few media programs recently about it. So we're excited to be working with him on that. And I believe the rest of the membership is still pending governor's office review, but they put up an application form. It may still be accepting applicants. They put up a form for folks who are interested, and there was quite a lot of engagement and interest. So we're glad about that. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Expect to get readouts from me and or Denise, and maybe we'll see if we can get Neil to pop over here to a future meeting, just to make sure effectively. Go ahead, John.
Oh, I was just wondering, about the technical enablement. Is there a way I could learn more about it, like just as a member of the public or a member of this group? I'd be very interested in that because I think that's an area where a little work could pay back well.
Yes. Miles, can you make sure we have a note of that to engage John on that part of the conversation and make sure that we're, I think, John, I think what might be most useful for that is the conversations we're having with UVM around their supercomputer
Their
center and making that
supercomputer.
available.
That's
Yeah.
exactly what I was interested in
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
So we've been talking about that under the context of the Rural Collaboration Hub,
Okay.
even before any of the NSF stuff started happening. So I think
Okay.
that'll become a thing. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's exciting.
Okay. Miles, do we have another agenda item or is this the end?
This was the end of the planned agenda.
Okay.
I've got additional stuff pertaining to our next step for the guidelines and what we're thinking with respect to document review that I'd be happy to talk about. But that would be going off script, so
All right.
be good either way,
I'll bring
really.
up one additional relevant item to the task force then, and that is there was a bill this year, and Miles, maybe you can help me with the number because it's escaped me. There was a bill this year which would extend the duration of this council, as well as add some additional membership, and have this group work on some additional topics around healthcare and
Is that
human
a
services.
814 or
814, yeah, that's probably
I think
yeah,
814
that sounds
is
right.
one.
Let me look at that. Anyway, we are still receiving the package of bills from the legislature. Those are coming in fast and furious at the moment. And we're doing reviews and the governor is doing reviews. So I haven't seen kind of what the final of everything is yet, how everything shakes out. So if there are any changes to the council, we'll be discussing those at our July meeting and operationalizing them after that meeting. So depending on what ends up ultimately happening with passage and stuff, we'll be reviewing that and have answers for that at the next meeting. Cool. All right. So might go on to public comment. We can. All right. So floor is now open for public comment. We request that you keep any public comments to 2 minutes and germane to the general content being discussed. So if you have a comment, raise your hand or drop a comment in chat and we will recognize you. Go ahead. Right. I'm waiting for an awkward pause. I will leave the window open for public comment. I will also open it up to any counselors if there's anything that you all would like to discuss or bring to the attention of the council. I'm happy to do that. And if the council has interest, Miles, if you wanted to talk about your document processing, if you're ready to, happy to use a few minutes to do that.
Yeah, I'd be happy to take a couple minutes just to kind of give a high level overview of what we're.
So let me say this. Let's do it this way. I'll take a motion to adjourn the formal council meeting. Anyone who needs to go can bounce. Anyone who's interested in hearing about some of the work that we're doing on in document land can stay. But this will be, I would accept a motion to adjourn and end the formal part of the AI meeting.
So moved.
Thank you. I have a motion from Chris. Can I have a second?
I second.
All right. Thanks, John. All in favor of adjourning the formal part of our meeting and moving into an informal informational session, say aye.
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 All right. And the ayes have it. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. I will leave the recording going because people may be interested in hearing about this. But that is the end of the formal agenda. Now, anyone who needs to bounce, feel free to bounce. And happy Friday to you. But Miles, over to you for informal discussion of what you're working on.
Great. Well, thank you, Josiah, and to all of our council members and everybody who joined today. I'm just going to take around 10 minutes to talk through this, and obviously that this is informal, so you're welcome to, yes, the reading list idea. Yeah, John, I'd be happy to take a couple minutes to speak to that as well.
Go ahead, Miles. You can dive into your 10 minutes.
Okay. So yeah, the big picture, as we discussed earlier, figuring out how to effectively ensure that artificial intelligence documentation that we're generating with AI is reviewed sufficiently. We're recognizing that there's a pretty critical need there, and there is some pretty helpful high-level guidance that we're planning to inform our policies on AI content review around. So that the main framework is NIST AI 600-1, which is basically just a companion to their AI RMF or risk management framework. And it goes through 12 generative AI specific risks, and then additionally provides some guidance for the governance and risk assessment and mitigation steps that are necessary to actually mitigate those risks effectively. And I just have a couple things here. So this is the draft checklist that we're building out that's likely going to be a component of this guidance. That is just summarizing the categories. And so a big picture for any type of critical AI generated document like internal process documentation, for example, our intent is ultimately that any AI generated docs that fall into those critical categories will pass through this document review process. And again, these are the 12 areas that are grounded in NIST AI 600-1. So that the general idea is that this is a relatively comprehensive list of all of the things that need to be validated to ensure that AI generated content is actually accurate. There's a lot here. So, one of the other things that we're thinking through is how to actually effectively ensure that this review is being undertaken, at a level of complexity that's appropriate for the importance or risk sensitivity for a given type of document. And this was just a different presentation that I gave on this earlier this month. But the general idea, again, is that reviewing AI output is really challenging for people because it presents a challenge for the heuristics that we've developed to sort of sniff out whether or not content is accurate or not, right? Because AI systems, when they generate human language content, they're pretty effective at doing that in a way that seems extremely fluent. And so, the traditional ways of just reading something over and thinking, oh, hey, that sounds right. Obviously, in the context of AI generated output, that doesn't work. And so with the review structure that we're building out based on the NIST review categories, we're also looking at identifying which tier of review a given document falls into. So, going back to the checklist, ensuring that every concrete claim is verified, ensuring that every claim maps to the supplied source accurately, so on and so forth. We recognize that there are likely documents where moving through all of these steps could be as comprehensive as just writing the document manually from the outset. And, that there are also additionally ways that we can structure our AI document generation processes to, include sort of self-validation or verification layers, or include an automated adversarial review step that I think will cut down on the manual review time significantly. But the other thing that we're thinking is more or less that the review can be scoped to the underlying risk requirements for a given document, really. So for internal summaries or draft outlines or, team wikis or, low circulation documentation, something like an author self-check with, just one peer acknowledgement step, reviewing each of the 12 dimensions with a lighter touch, that's likely sufficient. And then we want to make sure that we're differentiating higher risk documents. So things like any customer facing content that drives constituent action or decision making, obviously anything that involves regulatory or compliance contexts, anything legal, medical, or financial. Obviously, there are significant caveats for even using artificial intelligence to inform decision making in those contexts. So really, we want to be cognizant of the fact that different documents inherently have different risk levels, which requires a differing approach to how we're actually reviewing the docs. Let's see. And
If
then
I can
the
chime
other
in for just a
thing.
minute.
Oh, yeah, go for
I
it.
think this is great, Miles. I think one topic, as I think we will, is helpful because I think we will be diving into this a lot as we get into the fall. One thing that I hadn't really seen be a real life risk until very recently is that it's now easy to inadvertently use AI to create stuff that is not possible for any one person to validate. So an example of this is when you ask an AI tool to look at multiple data sets and create a cross-domain report. You can quickly get into territory where it is possible there is no one human expert who can actually validate all those claims, who can actually validate that the content is correct. And so having a structured way of doing that and of establishing the expectation that I guess an example is a silly small example, but I can get legal advice from an AI chatbot. I can review that legal advice and say, yes, that was my intent, and slap that our current citation on there and meet the requirements from the citation perspective. But I'm not actually capable of reviewing that content meaningfully and knowing whether it's correct. And so what we're trying to do here is establish some guardrails around what does it mean, like what is an appropriate review when you put that citation on there that says, I reviewed it, what's an appropriate level of review? And just trying to find ways of structuring that guidance in ways that employees can understand it.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense. And it ties in really closely to the last thing that I just wanted to mention that we're thinking about really heavily in this space, which is the idea of oversight compression. And the general idea here is that there's an inherent organizational friction here where when we get to a point where we can generate things like AI generated documentation rapidly and at scale, that's not really removing a bottleneck, more as it's just shifting that bottleneck from the documentation generation step to the documentation review step. And I've seen a number of examples in, say, safety critical industries like the medical field, for example, where radiologists who had previously been manually reviewing scans are now using artificial intelligence tools to do that. The AI tools can do that review pretty effectively. So now an organization that previously could use humans to review 100 scans per day has the capacity to review 5,000 scans per day using AI imagery analysis tools. But then the challenge is that you may very well have a regulatory or policy review process in place. But when that review step is where your organizational bottleneck sits and where you're facing significant pressure to expedite to the extent possible, inherently that's going to compress the level of oversight that your AI outputs are actually seeing in real life. And so what this looks like, and then the main thing that we're planning to guard around in this context is, looking at this before AI flow on the left, obviously the high effort step is the human drafting, and then the human reviewing is proportionate in effort, generally speaking, to the content that was drafted by the human. But then after implementing AI for these kinds of processes, there are really two ways that that can go. And the ideal one that we're aiming towards is that, obviously the AI drafting step is pretty low effort, and then the human review requires significant rigor, regardless of, what type of bottleneck pressure that review step is facing. So, how can we guard against that from a policy and organizational perspective, to make sure we're not in this right hand risky category where humans feel significant time pressure to get reviews out the door, so we just have people following the letter of the guidance, but really what they're doing is just looking at something really quickly and saying, oh hey, that looks great. So that's really one of the main things that I'm hoping to guard against. And I know we're coming up on time here, so I'm happy to stop talking about this. And I saw Josh, you had a question as well. So yeah, happy to just open up to any informal discussion that you folks have on this. And Josh, feel free to go first.
I don't have an answer for this, but I think that increasingly the AI can generate so much content at such a high quality that we can't human review it all. And so in the software development world, it's wrestling with that, right? They can't read every line of code and do code reviews. And if they don't use AI as a process within their code, it's probably not safe in terms of cybersecurity at this point that it should be put in production. So like when I see the bottom part says, the danger is not that AI generates errors, it's that humans stop looking for them. I would assume that that sentence was generated by AI, just
Yes.
by how it reads. It's the style
I
of
do.
it. So
Hopefully-
it stands out.
I do have my citation up here.
I
Yes,
know.
just wanted
I'm
to double
picking
check
on
and
you a
make sure.
little there. But my point is, some of the controls actually come earlier, right? In
Mhm.
terms of how we control the context that we give the AI is going to lead to that output. And then some of the controls also come in terms of QA processes using AI as well.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Go ahead, John.
This is very interesting. I know that at Beta, we have the same concerns about oversight, like writing code, who checks it. But one of the main things that we've got to think about is the sort of technical debt you get when anyone can create all these, even if it's perfect quality, the maintainability and extensibility later on, especially as, you tend to work lots of little pieces, people move on, change roles, interfaces change, and the sort of technical debt of maintaining all of that and revising all of that when it's needed later, pretty hard to compute, but kind of curious. I mean, I sort of see that in here, but I think that's another consideration.
That's a really good point, and I appreciate that, because I think that our approach to artificial intelligence documentation generation and incorporating AI into our software development tooling, for example, that there's a lot of carryover here in terms of some of the risks, like the maintainability and extensibility issues for AI generated documents versus AI generated code, for one example. So yeah, I know that we're right up on time, but I'm looking forward to discussing this topic further next month, and I think that there will be a lot of overlap with some of the ongoing AI development work that we've been piloting as well. So yeah, thank you all for listening to this impromptu session. But yeah, I really appreciate your feedback, and I'm looking forward to discussing further next month.
And then John had a topic, so we'll jump over to that quick
Yes.
before we wrap.
It might be it was a simple thing, is that Miles and I had exchanged notes, and Miles, I just answered you very late, but we're all reading books, and I was wondering if there was some interest in having a sort of a book list somewhere, or even, people having 3 minutes to discuss a book that they liked on this topic, obviously. That was the only thing I was saying. I think we have a lot. I think it would be even helpful if the public had if it was visible to
You
the
have
public.
some
And the public
thumbs
could-
up. John,
Mhm.
sure collectively we've all read some very interesting stuff that pertains. So I don't know how to act on that, Miles, but let's do something.
Yeah, no, I know at the end of our session last month, we discussed just informally, providing book recommendations in sort of an ad hoc manner, just via email for our AI council members. But I'll put some thought into ways that we could potentially make that publicly available as well. Because
Sure.
I think that would be a really helpful resource beyond, the formal members of the AI council as well. So yeah, thank you for bringing that point up again
Yeah,
as well.
and I
And
just
I'll,
answered. I just responded to your month-old note. All right, thank you.
No worries, and I appreciate it.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you all. Yes, I see a few contributions. Yes, Miles, let us know how we're going to operationalize that, but I think that's a great idea. Thank you all. Appreciate the conversation and engagement on this. And we'll be back with you next month. We are planning to meet on the 3rd. That is the day before a holiday. If you're a council member and you're here, can you let me know if we should move that in your view? We're good on the 3rd?
That's a Friday,
All right.
right?
It's Friday. Yep.
I know typically when there's a federal holiday that falls on a Saturday, they observe it on a Friday. So I think that day is going to be given off to state employees.
Oh, good point. Okay. So then we will be on the first Friday of working days. So then we will be the 10th. Thank you, Susanna, for the clarification. And thank you all for not being confused by me. This is why Susanna usually drives these things. All right. So the next meeting will be on the 10th. So we will see you all then there, and looking forward to it. And have a great day. Happy weekend, all.
Thanks,
Thank you all,
everyone.
and
Thanks for
happy Friday.
facilitating, Josiah.
Thank you.